Welcome to Integration Nation. I'm Dee Daniels for Allison Sullivan and Associates Integrative Mental Health Care. It's all about self-care on this episode, how important self-care is and what it means to you and what it should mean to us.
Self-care is where it's at. A lot of times people confuse that with selfishness, self-indulgence, self-absorption, self-involved, all that kind of stuff. So we need to sit down and talk about what self-care really is so people can understand how foundational it is to all aspects of mental health.
We can't thank people enough for subscribing, downloading the podcast.
I know.
We've had some really record days for downloading, and
it's been so exciting.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so exciting. Can't thank everyone enough. We are inspired and excited to keep delivering content that is helpful, that is meaningful for you all. So thank you. Continue to please leave us those 5-star ratings and reviews. That's so helpful. And please keep contacting us with questions and the content that you want to hear. And we will keep developing and delivering that content because we are passionate about this and are so excited to be building this community with you.
And you'll want to hang around for the end of the episode because
we're that's right.
Do a little Q&A. Speaking of emailing questions and getting questions, a little Q&A session from some of the past episodes. That's going to be a lot of fun. So a lot of people very interested in how to handle their daily lives and struggles, and this is a great way to do it.
Always reach out with your questions, things that come to mind when you're listening to an episode, how that relates to your life, and let us know. This is a new part of the podcast that we're including to continue to connect with you all in ways that are specifically meaningful to your lives. So absolutely stick around. We've got some good ones today.
Let's get started. Let's talk about self-care. I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people struggle with. I feel selfish when I'm involved with thinking about and planning out and doing self-care in my life. I feel selfish sometimes.
So let's talk about some of the myths associated with self-care. I think that's one of them. That's a primary one. If I'm caring for myself in a way that I feel like I have to, then that means I'm one of those people, one of those selfish people, one of those self-centered people, one of those types of people. And so that's the first myth I think we need to address. Self-care comes from a place of love and fulfillment and connection. Self-absorption, self-centeredness, self-involvement comes from a place of lack, from a place of disconnection. So when we're caring for ourselves, it actually helps us to connect with others more deeply. It's vital for that. So that's the first myth I think we need to dispel.
So many people still struggle even though they know that truth in their minds. And they still, when they get in the midst of crisis or in the midst of a busy schedule or in the midst of something going on with one of the kids or something going on at work, and they're like, I don't have time to take care of myself right now.
Yes. So that leads us to myth number 2 we can address. And that is that there's some kind of like postcard or business card or rack card or some kind of download that has the right ways to provide self-care, and anything else is not self-care. And most often on that list are things like take a vacation, do a spa day, really kind of, nice things, great things, but really grandiose things and things that may not be reflective of where somebody's at and the circumstances they're in. So that's myth number 2 that I wanted to dispel. Self-care can happen in any kind of situation you're in. Sometimes for me, if I'm really honest, self-care is about, I'm really tense right now. I'm overthinking everything going on. I need to just close my eyes and take a few breaths for a minute. That can be self-care. So, myth number 2 is that self-care has to be grandiose, cost a lot of money, and is in a list of only like 5 things. Self-care can be virtually anything because really, at the end of the day, it's about the why, not the what.
I was amazed to learn over the last couple of weeks. I've just been going through stuff and just having some very busy things happening in my life. And one of the things that I needed, that I was very alert to, I needed some quiet. Mm-hmm. And that was just, and I'm thinking about that, something that easy, which can also be difficult when you're very busy and have a lot going on, but something that easy, I'm like, that is self-care. For giving myself some time. Okay, I might be driving down the road for 30 minutes. How about no radio during that time? How about no noise during that time? That for me was self-care.
Exactly. And it also illustrates what I was just saying, that came from a place of being connected to yourself. And in no way did that awareness or that choice deprive anybody else around you. It just gave you space to reset yourself. And that's the essence of what we're talking about, because the reality is that most of us have competing priorities that are important to us. And most of us have responsibilities that we value and that we honor. And so we have to, and a lot of us have budgetary constraints. That just is. And so we have to factor in all of those aspects of our circumstances, which means, that self-care starts where we are.
As much as we would like to get a massage every week, we probably can't afford to get a massage every week. Things like that. I mean, you'd like to do these grandiose things, but sometimes it's really about just getting aware of what your needs are and saying, okay, I need to relax. I need to let go of some things, maybe 10 minutes of yoga, free yoga, from just a little quick YouTube video, maybe that.
Absolutely. And that really reflects the concept of starting where you are. So let's take your massage example, because I think that, many people can relate to that. Well, I mean, I would take care of myself if I could get a massage every week. Okay. So let's say your budget, because of kid extracurriculars or other stuff going on, doesn't allow you to do that. Well, then maybe it does allow you to get a foam roller. And maybe it does allow you to take 15 or 20 minutes in your room foam rolling, because that's going to help your body release tension. That's going to help your body reset itself. And it still is serving the purpose that, in a similar way that a massage would, it's giving your body specific attention without distraction. So when we can really allow ourselves to think about, what sounds good to me right now, and then figure out a way that we can do that in our circumstances, whatever our circumstances are, then that's really the essence of self-care.
Interesting, and I know you've seen this too. Interesting that when we're in the middle of crisis, or when we're in the middle of hard times or struggle or very hectic stuff going on, the self-care goes way down to the bottom of the list. And when we're outside of that, we're like, oh yeah, we can have self-care all day long. I'm doing yoga every day. I'm meditating twice a day. I'm eating right. But then crisis hits. That's the time.
So yes, and just a barometer for everybody listening. If in crisis, if in the middle of a bunch of things, you are finding yourself prioritizing some elements of self-care, then I want you to really understand that you have really gotten a firm grip on what integrative health and wellness is all about. And for those of you that still struggle with that's the first thing that goes out the window when crisis hits, let me say to you, it actually is the fuel that you need. It's the insulation, it's the stuffing, it's the gas in your tank, it's all of those things that you absolutely need in order to fulfill the role that you have in resolving the crisis, in supporting the people around you, in problem solving whatever's going on. That self-care is not going to take time, energy, and investment away from that. It's actually going to allow you to do that. So I just want to ask everybody listening in that position to consider that that's the fuel that you need. It's like an energy drink without any of the bad stuff.
I love that. Yes, it really is. And maybe that makes sense, because you're talking about starting where you are. Starting where you are also means I'm going to act on this. I know I need some self-care in the middle of crisis. I want to start there. I'm not going to say, I'll take care of myself when things get better.
I think that is... So let's make that myth number 3, that's the process to start to develop a relationship with self-care, that you have to wait until things are calm and steady to start to explore this. So glad you brought that up. I think what you just said is actually more relevant and helpful to people. Figure out a way, especially if you're in crisis now or a bunch of stuff is going on. It doesn't even have to be in crisis. You can just feel super overwhelmed with all the stuff that you're juggling right now. That is the time to find pockets to practice self-care. That's going to clarify all kinds of aspects of the situation, which is actually going to reduce the overwhelm, reduce the fear, reduce the uncertainty and the insecurity.
I think you hit it too with finding pockets, because when you're overwhelmed, you don't have an hour, probably. And maybe in your mind, you're thinking, well, if I had an hour, I would do some self-care. I started when I've been busy here for the last few weeks and overwhelmed with some things myself. I started doing some mini exercises. I started doing like 5-minute things or 10-minute things, because if that's what I had, I gave myself a pocket.
Yes.
A little mini something.
Yes. This is what I have, so this is what I'm going to use. And that's the essence of it's I know it's really overused, but that right there is the essence of bloom where you're planted, which I think is such a beautiful principle. It's really rooted in self-care. That's exactly what we're talking about here. It's about utilizing the exact resources we have in the moment to offer ourselves whatever it is we need. It can be as simple as what I said a few minutes ago, just taking 2 minutes to breathe. 2 minutes to breathe, 5 minutes to take a walk around the block. I remember when Meredith's ceiling collapsed next door, and things were a mess in the office, and clients were coming in, and all kinds of stuff was going on at once. Workers were doing their thing, looking in, my window saying, hey, we're working out here in the middle of a session, that whole thing.
Knock, knock, knock.
One day, I went to take trash out to the dumpster, and I took a deep breath, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to keep on walking. I'm going to do a Forrest Gump here. I'm just going to keep on going. And I just walked around the block a few times. And that was all I needed to reset, to clarify what the priorities were in the office and what needed to get done. And I came back and was super productive the rest of the day. So that's starting where you are. It wasn't saying, well, if only all these workers weren't in our office. Well, if only our ceiling was intact. It was saying, okay, because of all of this, these are the limitations. What can I do? Well, I've got shoes on. I've got a block I can walk around. Let me just do that a few times and take some deep breaths. Notice the sights around me, and I was good to go.
Something that you say a lot, and I really love it, and I sort of keep it in my little toolbox all the time, is be where your feet are.
Be where your feet are, yes.
And I love that because it brings me back to an awareness of the present moment all the time. And whether I'm driving, whether I'm, in the shower getting ready or whatever the case may be, in my mind starts to zip around with all kinds of stuff, and I use that as my anchor thought: be where your feet are.
Be where your feet are, and that's enough. I think it's a portal for self-neglect. Actually, when people say, "Well, I wish I had time to do that, but I don't, so I have to wait on that." That is a portal for self-neglect. When actually, whatever's going on is enough to start caring for yourself. It's as simple as putting your oxygen mask on before helping another person put their oxygen mask on. It's what allows you to be present for yourself and another.
Do you want to do the ABCs of figuring it out?
Let's do the ABCs.
Want to do those?
All right. So first, let me say there are types of self-care that I think might help people figure out what self-care might look like, because I suspect some of the questions we're going to get about this show are, well, self-care is all well and good, but what does that exactly mean besides taking a walk around the block? So here are some categories I think that can help people start to figure out what that means. There's relational self-care, there's professional self-care, there's financial self-care, physical self-care, psychological, emotional self-care, and spiritual self-care. Those right there are going to give people, the first filter to figure out, okay, where am I struggling right now? Where do I feel disconnected? Where do I feel overwhelmed? Is it at work? Is it at home? Is it both? What's that about? Which allows people to start to think about, maybe I need some relational self-care. Maybe that means I need some quiet time, like you were saying. Or maybe that means I need some time with my partner where we're just laughing or we're just having a conversation that's uninterrupted. If people notice that most of their thinking and most of their concern centers around work, then maybe they need some professional self-care. Maybe that means a mental health day. Maybe that means an uncomfortable conversation with a colleague or with a boss. Maybe that means, hiring someone for support. Who knows? But the point is, starting to filter into those categories helps people begin to figure this out. And then that's where the ABCs come in.
I first want to say that whole filtering conversation makes me think of when you take your car in to get it checked. They need to find out the scan.
Yes. What system?
Right. Where on the car.
Yes. Where the issue is.
You don't know exactly where the issue is, and you sort of have to do the scan. Until you do the scan, I think you're sort of really overwhelmed.
Yes. So again, let me say relational, professional, financial, physical, psychological, or spiritual. Any one of those areas can be a filtering place to start to inquire and explore, where do I need some self-care? And then the ABCs that I think are useful to help people figure that out is A, approach the situation with honesty, especially self-honesty. If we're doing shady stuff with the situation, we're not going to be able to figure out what kind of care we need if we don't want to be honest about it, if we don't want to admit what is, because it makes us feel like we're bad people or not enough, then it's going to be hard for us to figure out what kind of self-care is actually going to be meaningful. So the first step is approach the situation and yourself with honesty. Knowing that whatever you find is not evidence of you not being enough or not evidence of you being bad. It's just evidence of where the injury is and what needs treatment. So that's A. B is to be willing to do something different. I think that can get overlooked quite a bit. People tend to think that if something outside of themselves changes, then it would be easier, better, more appropriate for self-care. But a lot of times, all we need to do is just think about the situation a little differently or do one thing a little differently to allow ourselves to access some more care and connection with ourselves. And then C is be compassionate with everyone involved. You and anyone else who's a part of the situation. All the priorities, all the people, all the connections, all the stuff that matters to you. When we can have a compassionate lens as opposed to a judgmental lens or a blaming lens or an envious lens, then we can really find a way to use that filtering system and meet ourselves where we are.
I love that. And the compassion piece, I think, is very difficult when you're in the midst of it. So keeping that as a card in your back pocket to say, okay, where can I have some compassion in this?
Especially if, let's say, it's a work scenario where you feel like you're being wronged.
Yes.
Exploited, taken advantage of. It's really challenging for people to have compassionate feelings and thoughts about everyone concerned. However, compassion is not about letting people off the hook. It's not about indulging or giving people a pass on potentially exploitative behavior. It's just saying, I see the suffering of everyone in this. I'm not sure what the specific components of suffering are in these other people, but if they are behaving in ways that are exploitative, there's suffering involved. And I recognize everyone's suffering. That kind of attitude allows people to think about, okay, because everyone's suffering, I'm suffering, how can I care for myself in this situation?
I love that. The ABCs.
The ABCs.
I love that. I love it so much. You want to do our Q&A? Are you ready for that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So Q&A is all about answering some of the questions that you have sent, and we want to address some of those and some of the past episodes that you've asked questions about. It's always easy to connect with us and ask us your questions. You can do that via Instagram, via Facebook.
The website, email, all of it. You can find us.
All of it. So Brad had a question about our burnt waffles and bad attitudes
Bring
episode.
it on, Brad.
Loving this episode. I listened to it 14 times, I swear. I loved it. It was wonderful. And just getting to know your relationship, I'll call it, with waffles has been beautiful. It really has. And if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen. But Brad's question was, he said, Allison, first of all, I ate 2 waffles after listening to the episode and loved them. Thank you.
Way to go, Brad.
Also, Brad said, regarding non-attachment and trying to not attach myself to certain outcomes, I feel like sometimes I set myself up for disaster by making a to-do list every day, because sometimes I don't get all of the things done on the list, and by the end of the day, I feel like a failure. Mm-hmm. What should I do?
Great question. Okay, so number 1, Brad, so glad you're in with us on the waffle movement. It's going to go strong in 2019. I have a feeling. Also, okay, so this is a really common stuck spot for people. And initially my answer is going to sound like a non-answer, but stick with it for a minute, because I promise it's the real answer here. So to-do lists and the value of to-do list depends. It depends on what is our actual honest motive for having the to-do list. And that's where, even some of the stuff we talked about today about approaching the situation with self-honesty is really relevant to figuring that out. If you're setting up this to-do list because I have to do these things in order to prove to myself that I'm enough, that I'm worthy, that I'm adequate, then that's going to be a setup for failure every time. If that list is just a way to kind of get some of the stuff out of your head and maybe organize some priorities and some opportunities, and is kind of like a loose framework for where your attention and energy needs to focus, then that's probably going to feel better at the end of the day if everything isn't crossed off the list. So, my overall answer is to use honesty and compassion with yourself about, why is this list in my life to begin with?
I love that answer. That is a fantastic answer, because I connected with Brad when I saw that question and thought, sometimes I struggle with that too. And so some days I don't even make the to-do list, because some days I'm realizing it's actually better for me to just focus on the 2 things I know I need to get done.
Yes.
Instead of making a big old list that I'm going to look at later and be disappointed about.
Absolutely. I mean, I just did it this week. So I do use a planner, but I use a planner in a really kind of loose way to get everything out of my head so that I don't have to think about it, because I know it's written down somewhere. And one of the things on my to-do list this week was to call back Jack. Jack is a consultant of mine, and I had it on my to-do list, or on my planner, Monday, which got moved to Tuesday, which got moved to Wednesday, which got moved to Thursday. And guess what? At 3:30 today, it is Friday today, I called Jack.
It was Jack Attack at 3:30 today. I love it.
And it wasn't because I didn't feel every day when I didn't call him, I didn't feel like, I didn't call Jack. It was just like, that's out there still left to think about this week. Let me find a space to fit that in. It wasn't coming from a place of, because I didn't fit it in, I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. I haven't found that space yet.
You didn't let it weigh you down.
No. And I knew that because it was in the planner, eventually it would get done, which is the whole point.
That's so true. I love that. That's a great way to look at it. You can always get in touch with us and send us your questions. Very easy to do. And of course, the services here always available to you. So many services as we touch on all parts here.
So many services. We have all kinds of stuff for body work related to mental health, including yoga workshops and massage therapy. We have nutritional interventions for mental health, most notably our food mood group. We have monthly aromatherapy workshops. We've got everything. We've got mindfulness. We've got meditation. But most importantly, I think we have a very firm commitment to see people from a whole person perspective. And that's what matters most.
You can get the Integration Nation podcast on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play. If you are sharing it with someone else, please do, and help them know how to subscribe on their phone. Sometimes that can be a little daunting.
So it's really easy to subscribe on your phone, especially I'm not as familiar with Google Play, but whatever device you are using and however you stream music, you can search for podcasts, and ours will come up when you type in Integration Nation. There will be some kind of button next to it that says subscribe. You just hit that and boom, you're subscribed. Now, I do know on Spotify, it's follow, not subscribe. Mm-hmm. You can find us on Spotify too. So if you just go to their podcast button to search for podcasts and type in Integration Nation, will pop up and you just hit follow.
It's really easy.
What's really great about it is then the new episodes will automatically download to your device. So you don't have to wonder, when is a new episode coming out? What is this episode? They'll just show up.
You don't have to go look for it, which is awesome. So wherever you're listening right now, be sure to share with someone else how to do it on their device. And that makes it really easy for them. Also, the website, Allison'sIntegrativeHealth.org. And sign up for the newsletter because so many cool things come in the newsletter.
Yes, news and events. That our email subscriber list is what we use to first let people know about what's going on in the practice and what we're involved in. So even when we're collaborating with other businesses in the community to offer things. So absolutely, if you go to our website, which is the hub of all of this, you can actually find out how to subscribe to the podcast from the website. And subscribe to our news and events, then you will be first to know whenever we are doing a new episode or creating a new workshop or just giving you information that is going to help you care for yourself, mind, body, and spirit.
So let's end self-care with what was your last moment of self-care and what is your next?
So my last moment of self-care was when I took a drink of water before we started taping this. And my next moment of self-care is going to be eating the delicious food that we have sitting right over there
that's been staring at us the entire time.
Yeah, so it's all about the physical self-care right now for me.
I love it. Allison'sIntegrativeHealth.org is the website. And of course, pass the word for the Integration Nation podcast. Allison Sullivan and Associates Integrative Mental Health Team is located in beautiful, historic downtown Fredericksburg, Virginia, and at Allison'sIntegrativeHealth.org. New and exciting workshops are available to you that will give you personal attention to meet your needs right where you are on your journey. Sign up for our newsletter to be the first to know when registration opens for workshops like Aromatherapy 101. Here's how you can discover to use aromatherapy to support your health. Did you know that a blend of frankincense, peppermint, and lemongrass supports wisdom, optimism, and it will help you release unhealthy attachments? This is where you can learn how to support your mental, emotional, and physical health with the Essential Oils workshops available to you monthly for no charge. Come meet the team. Schedule your session today for psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, yoga, and massage, and begin restoring yourself in mind, body, and spirit. If you'd like to call, the number is 540-907-0991 and online at Allison'sIntegrativeHealth.org. As Allison always says, self-care will save your life. Let go and lean in.